engagement, to make sure that women are more involved in the process, to addressing the barriers that folks are facing. There's a lot of people who maybe want to vote, but they're not sure how to or are unable to because of different laws and different discriminations. For example, trans folks who struggle to get through because of the name change or because of photo ID. And so we have to start thinking about, is our democracy actually accessible to everyone? Is it reasonable to expect everyone to vote? How are we going to make sure that we get these people to the poll and we make sure that their vote is actually able to count and matter? So there is a lot of work to do, and I know that you all are doing it, and I'm really glad about that. I myself have personally committed to working within the Muslim community to identify and address the barriers we face to getting civically engaged and getting us to the polls. I started with the people I'm closest to, my family. Slowly but surely, my family is now more engaged in politics, more aware of avenues for civic engagement, and register to vote more consistently. It is a long and ongoing process. It is meeting people where they are at. I sometimes still have frustrations by the lack of voter turnout in the Muslim community, but I know together we can address it and make it happen. Thank you so much.
Say the younger that whenever I see you all folks, I don't feel afraid about aging. So thank you. Give her another big round of applause for being such an amazing, young, thoughtful leader. We're now going to move to the public comment part of our agenda, and the purpose of this time is if there's somebody here who would like to speak to an item that is not on the agenda but within the purview of this committee, this would be the time to put in a card to do so. Seeing none, I'm going to move on then to item 5. And do we have quorum yet? Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to ask for a motion to approve items 13 and 14, which are minutes from January 9th and May 8th. May I get a motion? So moved. We have a motion from Ms. Walton. God, I know, I'm sorry, today. With a second by Dr. Dewan. Any other discussion on the item? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. What I'm going to ask is, Victor, if you can pass out the rest of the agenda. Let me just say we're going to try to accomplish quite a lot today. And so what I wanted to do is I'm going to pass out an agenda with the times in it for presenters, and so we can stay on track. And so we're going to have 2 presentations. Items 6 and 7 are presentations with a short period of time to ask questions. And then we're going to have 2 presentations, 8 and 9, that are really intended to help us refine our work. So let me just tell you what the end goal from products. We have very specific questions from Shannon Boucher, the Registrar of Voters. Those questions are in your packet. So in what's getting passed out, so I want to give you a chance to think about it. And then for item 9, we're going to do presentations on the commemoration ideas that people have. Let me also just say that as part of, so when we get through those, the goal today is really to get some, for lack of a better word, finality in terms of how we're going to proceed. As you know, we've already had our first event, which was the kickoff to the 26th, and there are going to be a lot of really exciting things that happen this year, but those ones that we want to put our imprimatur on, we got to decide today. So I'm saying that because I want to make sure that I'm not entirely sure I understand so when we break up into groups, I'm going to need folks to just buckle down and to stay for presentations, because what I'd like to do is at least get a consensus about what we're going to do today. So because of that, I'm also going to say to all of our speakers that I'm going to ask that we have 2 speakers that have 5 minutes each, and then Shannon, I'm going to ask you to be at 10. Fatima, I'm going to ask you to be at 10, and the reason I'm going to ask you to stick to those time frames is because the groups are going to break up anyway. Is that okay? And then I think we're going to have just a couple minutes to talk a little bit about the event we did on the 26th. And then I think we're going to wrap up. Okay? Does that sound okay? Sharon and I can do it in 5. Okay, great. And that way there's enough time for you guys to... But that way there's enough time, because you know what I'd like to do, you guys, is I'm going to come back and say, are we good with this? Are we good with this? Are we good with this? So is that okay? Yeah. All right. So I don't mean to rush you, but I'm going to be a little pushy. All right. Great. So I am really excited that we're going to move to item 6, and this is to receive a report from Councilmember Ong relating to the framing our work in intersectionality, and it's going to be from a youth perspective. And I think we're going to have you right over there, I think, just because the mic is over there, if that's okay.
Okay, can y'all hear me? Okay. Just to introduce myself, my name's Nicole Ong. I'm currently a senior at Lynbrook High School, and on this council, I represent the Girls Advisory Team of Santa Clara County Office of Women's Policy. So, as a council, our goal is fairly obvious: to celebrate the women's rights to vote, ensure accurate census counts, and increase electoral participation in the 2020 election. And from previous meetings, we learned that not all women had the right to vote in 1920. Asian women, Native American women, and Black women, just to name a few groups, were unable to vote due to legal and social barriers. As an Asian American teenager, my American history has been hidden behind the illusion that I am lesser than, not just because of my gender, but because of my race as well. We can no longer let this history define us, and it is up to us to make our own. But not letting history define us is different from acknowledging it. The theory of intersectionality is undoubtedly important in our work as a council. Coined by leading race scholar Kimberly Crenshaw, intersectionality is the theory that a person's overlapping identities allow them to face unique forms of discrimination due to those overlaps. We represent Santa Clara County's women, but the county's women face more barriers than those just due to gender alone. People are not defined by one thing, and we must acknowledge that in policy. So let's apply this idea to my community, Asian American women. So we've already been over the barriers that women face in the county in previous meetings, so I'm just gonna go over some of the barriers that Asian Americans face. So just to provide a little bit of background, according to the 2010 census, the United States is 5% Asian, and Santa Clara County is 37.7% Asian. However, Asian voter turnouts in the country are constantly below 50%. And as you can see in this graph, we have one of the smaller voter turnout rates compared to other racial groups. Studies have shown that Asian Americans tend to indicate strong opinions on many issues, and even make up the winning margins in many state districts. So even though Asian Americans are the fastest growing racial minority in the United States, the question still holds: why is Asian voter turnout so low across the nation? Well, for one, Asian American adults have the highest rate of limited English proficiency, with 35% of Asian American adults having a language barrier. So even though the Voting Rights Act mandates translated materials be available and accessible at polls, a study found that in the 2012 election, these materials were often inaccessible, with the poll workers unaware that they existed or unwilling to provide them. Further, the model minority myth, which is the idea that Asian Americans are socioeconomically better off than other minorities and have overcome racism, which is a longstanding idea that has influenced many social beliefs, allows politicians to overlook the Asian American community. The Asian community also experiences lower outreach from politicians, with 31% of Asian Americans reporting being contacted by politicians and candidates compared to the national average of 53%. And these are just a few of the barriers. So it's worth noting that the Asian American community is diverse. We have over 50 races and 30 languages spoken. So in the same way that not all women face the same barriers due to gender, not all Asian Americans face the same racial barriers to voting. But we can say that when Asian American women do face barriers, they face both racial and gender barriers to voting. economic barrier that we're not thinking about when only considering gender. Santa Clara County prides itself on its diversity, so let's make sure we can serve our county the way they deserve to be served. As we progress with our goals, let's remind ourselves of intersectionality's importance, because being a Women's Equality Council and failing to recognize the unique circumstances of women due to intersectionality is a failure to represent all women. Thank you.
Great job. If anybody have any questions you want to ask? No, Nicole, really, really excellent. Excellent job. Thank you.
I just want to add, Supervisor Chavez, Nicole is a graduate of the Girls Advisory Team.
Yay.
That's a leadership program that Office of Women's Policy runs in order that we get our young people trained on how to apply the gender lens. This, dear friends, is what the future looks like. And this is who we are today here in this council. So I couldn't be more proud of how well this turned out. Thank you, Nicole. I really...
Nicole, you're my retirement plan lady. All right, so I want to introduce Peg Carlson Bowen, and while she comes up, she is with AAUW, and she's going to be talking to us about the Work Smart program. But I also just wanted to ask if you all could give her a round of applause. I know I've done this with Sharon, but these ladies are part of the reason we're here today. So give her a round of applause.
Yeah, I'll probably. I'm like sort of Butch Cassidy. Can I move when I? Some of you don't know who.
I was going to say that.
Okay. So, who would like to have a raise? Who would like to have a raise? Okay, or a better job, or a promotion. Okay. All right. I was really glad to hear Susan talk about fear. Because who isn't afraid to ask for a raise? Who feels totally confident that they know every way they can squeeze the biggest amount of money out of whoever's got the purse strings? Not too many of us. It's fear. Degree or above, you can join us. We do, our mission is to work for gender equity for women and girls through advocacy, research, and education. What is an area that we could focus on, we looked at, and that is pay equity. The wage gap has been stuck for about 15 years. Have you heard anything change? It's 80%, it's 80%. And of course, for other groups, for subgroups in the minority. But by providing you with resources where you can get trained to negotiate your salary so that you can make more money. So that's what we're going to do. It's a program called Work Smart. What we're doing is we want you to negotiate for what you need today. Articulate your value, teach you how to position yourself so that the company knows what you bring every day, and teach you how to have that negotiation conversation so it's not a confrontation, but it's a conversation, and you feel confident and have the skills to make more money. And also, you need to negotiate for your future. It's your retirement. It's your Social Security. If you don't make more money now, if you fall behind now, and typically women often do early on, as soon as they get out of school and start a job, then you're going to be behind all the way through. So you know that in California, too, they no longer can ask you how much you made at your last job. Did you know that's law? So if somebody asks you that, you can say, well, I would really rather talk about salary once we define the position, etc. That's a technique I learned through this. And they expect you to negotiate. They expect you to be the tough negotiator and be able to have these conversations. So we have two ways that we do this. One is an in-person workshop, but everybody's got busy lives. There is a free online WorkSmart program that is available to anyone, anywhere across the country, and you can go on and do the modules and learn how to negotiate. We have, AAUW has used both models and trained almost 100,000 women across the nation so far. Our goal is to train 10 million women by 2022 and to close the wage gap by 2030. This problem is old. We're tired of dealing with that. Now, it's a free web-based online program. How many of you have been talked about, oh, I'm going to take that program online, and you have all the best of intentions, and you might even sign up, and then you don't do it. So we found that out with a pilot group. So we decided that we would help a little bit, put a little accountability in it. So we're having a WorkSmart showcase, where it's 3 different sessions, starting, I'll give you the dates, and all these little these cards are back in the back. If you want to take some, give them to a friend, whatever, child who still lives in your house. Oh, that's 5 minutes, I'm sorry. Anyway, and we're going to provide some support. So these are the workshops. They're at the Willow Glen Library. It's on Eventbrite. You can look up WorkSmart Showcase and come and join us, and we'll help you make more money.
Yay! That is a great offer. That is a great offer. Are there any questions for Peg? You know, yes, go ahead, Beth. Well done. Oh, right.
Is that right?
I forgot.
Okay.
We're Facebook
Sorry.
Living, so use your mics.
Anyway, so I'm encouraged by young people. Policy initiatives will advance, but as you know, state by state, it's very, very different. We want to just go around the policy and teach everybody to make more money.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. So we're going to go on. Now, these next 2 presentations lay the groundwork for what we're going to get done today. And I think, Shannon, are we starting with you or Pratima? Oh, they're both pointing at each other. So on the agenda, I don't know which order. So it's going to be, we're going to go with Shannon and Pratima. And what we're going to do, you guys, if it's okay, I'm going to have them both present. We can ask, if we can ask clarifying questions, because if you have ideas, we're going to do those in the small groups. Is that right from your perspective? Okay. All right. So let's give Shannon a big round of applause. She won't get to sleep this year. We're going to, thank you.
Okay, 5 minutes. I got to do this quick. Okay, let's see. So first I wanted to provide you an update on the Voters' Choice Act. As you know, we are using the Voters' Choice Act for the March 2020 election, and that's our future of voting. We gave a presentation before. So for vote centers, we've surveyed or talked to over 900 locations already, trying to come up with our about 120 locations. And soon we'll be making selections considering our public feedback that we got, the size and the cost of the centers. As far as outreach, we are working already with over 100 CBOs, community-based organizations, doing dozens and dozens of presentations. If you need one, we can come out to your group and do that for you. We're also working with language and accessibility communities, so any kind of community we can come out, we would be happy to. As far as advertising, you will see more information coming as we get closer to the election. We're beginning some now, and we're doing our biggest media campaign ever, spending probably about at least 7 times what we normally would spend on an election for campaigning. And everyone in our office is working on the VCA because, as you know, it's an enormous task. Okay. Oh, I had 10. All right. And just to let you know that we did sign the voting system contract, woohoo, and electronic poll book contract last week, and our ballot on demand printer contract will be hopefully signed by this Friday or next week. So we're doing all the technology, and at some point we'll have demos. People can come see the new system, or we'll take it out to you. So next, I wanted to talk about the Voter Engagement Working Group. We're one of the working groups, and we're still looking for any members who would like to come and attend. We meet monthly, and we've had 3 major goals that we've been working on. And one of those first is the Train the Trainer voter education event. So with that group, we are trying to train the trainer related to like Voters' Choice Act and presentations. We had our event last Saturday, the 7th, at the 70 West Heading, and we actually had a great turnout. Usually, you expect there were about 90 people signed up, and you think only half are going to come. We had 84 come, so that was great. So we were really happy about that. So we gave the demonstration, gave toolkits for the WELK toolkit and for the Voters' Choice Act toolkit. And we actually are kind of doing like a contest and a challenge with all of the attendees. We asked them to complete a pledge card, pledging to do one of 3 things, like doing 5 presentations in your community, doing social media posts, etc. So they're going to need to use some of our hashtags to prove that they're doing these things, to show that out in the community. So we're going to see who can do the most and send us the most pictures and showing in our community, sharing the voting information. So that'll be great. So that, even though the event was Saturday, continues on through the March election. So the second item that we're working on is the Get Out the Vote We 2020 postcard. And we're trying to get, more people, like all of us, more people out there to vote. And we wanted to send reminders to vote. There'll be nonpartisan reminders, of course, that go out with the We 2020 theme. So it will also talk about the 100th anniversary of the amendment. And so part of what we're going to be doing after we're done speaking is we're looking for your ideas on messaging. So if you have some ideas about this 2020 postcard, and how can we get volunteers, recruit volunteers to sign the postcards? They're quick, but there's a lot of them. So that'll be one of the items we're going to be talking about in our breakout groups. The third thing that we're doing, and this is a big shout out to the League of Women Voters who's doing this, and Tracy who's sitting over there, hi. And the high school registration, the League of Women Voters last year did a pilot project in Fremont Union High School District, and correct me if I get any of this wrong, where they did 5 high schools, and they went to all of the juniors in that class, in the high schools, because as you know, you can pre-register now, age 16 and 17. So With that pilot project, they found great success and organized people into like a leader in the area and got volunteers to break out and go into the high schools. So with the Board of Education, the AAUW, the League of Women Voters, our office, several groups, we want to go out to every high school in Santa Clara County, over 60 schools that we're going to hit, but we need your help. And we need volunteers because we, need people who can go out into the classroom, give a short presentation that's already prepared, get a toolkit. So like we will prep you with everything that you need. So we're in those planning phases, working with the Board of Education, thank you, Dr. Dewan, and about how we can get in and talk to the superintendent so that they can push down this program into their schools. So we're also going to be talking about that, looking for ideas and how can we recruit volunteers to do that in messaging. So that's another item we're going to be talking about after I'm done. And I think, actually I should have been on the side. Did I do it? Oh, 6 minutes.
Woo! There you go. Are there any clarifying questions that people have for Shannon?
Yes, Pat.
If you get requests for people to go out and do the presentation and you can't fulfill them, do you have a registration or a list of the people who came September 7th? And you could call us and maybe one of us could do it?
Oh, that would be great. I mean, I'm sure I could get a list. Oh. If the registrar of voters doesn't have staff to go out and do a presentation, other people may be willing, and do I have a list of the 84 attendees? I'm sure I can get one from the Office of Women's Policy, but so far we've been able to accommodate every request, but I appreciate that, and we might take you up on that.
Well, I was going to say that might go in the ideas section.
Yeah, that'd
Yeah.
be good.
All right, any other clarifying questions? Not so much ideas, but just clarifying. Go ahead, Norma.
Yes.
You did an excellent job, by the way. I want to preface what I'm saying. It was wonderful, very, very educational, and I enjoyed it very much. And my questions that I sent the day before were all answered. Now, during your presentation on Saturday, you showed a template of what the Voters' Choice Act ballot, or just template, and you asked us not to use that until it was updated.
Right.
And I got the box, and I really would like to start, but I want to make sure I want to make sure my packet is complete. So I just want to know, when should we expect to receive that template that you're still working on?
I need to talk to the vendor and our outreach team because that was something the vendor gave us because we don't have the actual technology in the office yet. We were having our kickoff meetings and planning all that out. So I will have to get back to you, Norma, but I will get back to you. Appreciate that.
Everybody gets back to Norma. Okay. Anybody else clarifying? No? Then we're going to give her a
Thank you.
wild round of applause. You're going to put on your thinking caps to get ready. And one thing I'm going to ask is if you're asking a question, if we could have staff just help with the mics, just because we're Facebook Living and we want people to be able to hear all of your brilliant thoughts.
Okay, well, good afternoon, committee members and allies. It's so nice to see you here and to be here. My name is Sharon Buska, and I'm one of the co-chairs of the WELC Work Group. And I think you all know our very first event that happened on Monday, August 26th. I know Pratima will be telling more about it and reporting about it. And of course, we made the news in a good way, and we also... had the slideshow that is going on. I want to talk to you about a couple of events that we have planned, but our committee, the WELC Work Group Committee, represents you. So if what we talk about up here is not something that you want to see done, or you have another idea, please come to our sheets of paper and let us know, write down so what we can make sure that we are including what you feel your representation needs. We talked about intersectionality. Thank you, Nicole. That's what we need to make sure, because we are a small, dynamic, hardworking committee who is always looking for more people, allies, and so please let us know what you think. The next thing that we have coming up is that we've launched the website. we2020.org. Please visit it. I also noticed that another county, which shall be remain nameless, has we-2020.org. But we don't need a hyphen. We are one full together group. Okay. Please visit it. Your pictures will be on it as members of the commission. They also have a list of resources that talk about the suffrage movement, that talk about what is happening, and they have a great list of books for youth and young people about the suffrage movement. So if you're looking for something for holiday gifts or birthday gifts, check out the books that were recommended by the committee that was put on. It is brilliant. It is just brilliant. So that's something that we launched. The next thing is that we're currently working on a format for elementary, middle, and high school students to creatively share what suffrage means to them. So we're looking for representation in any form of media, spoken word, written word, videoed word. It can be submitted in any language, and the entries chosen will be in the displayed at the county offices in the month of March. In the month of March. Okay, so I've probably taken 4.5 minutes, but Protima?
Thank you. Office of Women's Policy is also very excited about the fact that the Centennial Work Group that we co-chair along with AAUW, as Supervisor Chavez has mentioned, the reason we're all here today is because they approached the board to do something about the Centennial. One of the most important things that we want to tell you about is the 2020 Youth Live event that's planned for May. Dr. Diwan, one of our council members, her office is working closely with the youth engagement group, and this event, even though it's not part of what the Centennial group is planning, this is one of the big key events. The other piece that I want to share with you is the fact that we're going to be releasing a passport where you can curate events, including panels, discussions, or book launches related to the 19th Amendment Centennial. As you know, on the 26th of August 2019, we had our kickoff, but there were several other events happening within the county itself for the exact same commemoration. What we want is to have all of you go out in the communities, find out what's happening, post it on social media, post it on WE 2020, and when you get access to the passport, make sure that you enter it into the passport. That way we make sure most people know what's happening, because we're not the only group, but we want to be able to curate this as a knowledge that we can share later. And then I also want to talk about the fact that in October, there will be a lantern walk. I know I skipped one point, and the reason I skipped it is because that's going to be our breakout. The lantern walk is going to be us getting together in a solemn occasion to commemorate what passed, which was the Centennial. And there will be more on the lantern walk from the Centennial Work Group as time goes by. We're now going to say, this is what we need from you when you do a breakout. And with that, we are done. Supervisor Schaaf.
Just one other thing in the back. There is
Sharon. Go ahead, Sharon, go ahead.
There is a letter to community partners about how community organizations can be helping with the 2020 celebration, and how the 2020 celebration of the county can help their organizations. So please pick one up. It will be on the WE 2020 website, but it's great to give out to your partner organizations, maybe your own organizations, how we can all work together.
Excellent.
Now I'm done.
So, no problem. So can you just talk about how we're going to do the breakout groups real quick?
So we basically want 2 sets of voter engagement groups back there. We have little flip charts up there, and then 2 sets for the Centennial. So you can get up and join these 2, whichever subject matter you want to participate in, and we're ready to go when you are.
Great. And then so here's a couple of things that I want to make sure of, just with all of you, is that when we're going to do the report outs for both of these, I want to spend the bulk of the time literally going through, and where we need to is prioritize the efforts of the group. So what I'm going to ask is that I think we have 20 minutes for this piece. And so we expect people to be in one group and sort of dive in. So I know it's hard to pick, but we're going to ask you to do that. And then if I could, when we do the report outs, what I'm going to ask is that the folks, that whatever the committee members are that are leading those committees actually do the report outs, because you might be able to translate better for us the content and context. And then when we wrap up, I do want to take advisory votes. So I really want to make sure I understand where everybody is. Is that okay as a process for everyone? Mm-hmm. Okay, everybody know where they're going? Yes. You have your thinking caps on? Yes. And I know if I see people by the coffee, I'll know why, what the intent is. So go ahead and go wild and go change the world. We are taking a recess from the committee because in order to do this kind of breakout groups, we recess and then we will reconvene. Thanks, everyone.
I'm okay with that too. But so I'm going to give you that because it just has the name. But I'm going to read that letter first. What she said is outside persons. If you want to give those to those persons who are involved in this letter, so there must be something that says here's how you can engage. Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure. And so, like I said, after me, it gives me something to do. since you don't get to, let me know because I know all of them. So I can get on the list.
put my cards in.
And it's,
League is really gearing up for a lot of exciting things that are
and as you can see, oh my God, we go up and down the county. So I think the next one is
you know, and I really hope too that people will maybe get things done by August of 2020. I realize that now you are starting on the second 100th anniversary. You know, I really been trying to tell you, so this is my card. Okay, that's great. Okay. So yeah, we will be in contact. Thank you. Thank you, Gail. Thank you. Hi, Celeste. Hi, Celeste. Are you taking your badges? I got mine. So yeah, that guy. So we get it, and we've invested actually quite a lot in addressing yeah, I know So mostly we use it to provide funding. We're putting it into law enforcement, prosecution, on that side, but we're also investing in spaces, job and training services, and housing. And we're partnering with the South Coalition and Trafficking. I assume you're working with them already, or you don't know them? Okay. So what it is that I do regularly, my office is working on Maya. And what I would suggest is actually sitting down with Maya and getting a lay of the land. And then, because I think once you have a lay of the land, it's helpful. Yeah. So, do you have a card? Okay, so I'm going to have Maya. And it's spelled M-A-J-A. And so I know, right, and so when you get a phone call, you go, but I will ask Maya to get a chance to sit down and meet with you, so she can talk to you about what we're doing relative to human trafficking. And in part, I will say that, you know, we've been at this a bit. I don't know if I have our evaluations relative to
No, what's that? Yeah, they were acting good. I was like, what's going on here?
Write this one down. You need to go on their, you need to go on their website. What was I just, I can't believe I got a pen. What would I do? Yeah, organization, nationwide, internationally, that fights for trafficking. And once you talk to Maya and have a little more background, because one of the things they found out is that most of the folks who are forced to report their taxes, and we still use 911. But it makes sense if you think well, and actually, it's a way to think about it. And that's like, how will you do that? And so, if you notice, if you go into restaurants, now they're bus stations. Yeah. And what it'll say is, from where you can help Texas. So, and I mentioned that because I think we are trying to figure out the way that technology can work. Yeah, but talk to Maya and then go on to their website. They have their website is that they have a lot of stories, and the Office of Women's Policy website is it's all about youth trafficking. It's like those red flags and the trafficking. And in it, there's a link that's really worth watching. It'll help you get a sense of the applicability. Yeah. Okay. All right. Because I've had this much water. No, but I'll have Maya get a hold of you. She's fabulous. And in fact, I'm going to give this a extra. All right, everyone, I'm giving you a 5-minute warning. 5 minutes to be brilliant. All right, folks, I'm going to ask people if they can grab their seats so we can rock and roll. Yeah, don't, Prochima's going to start coming over and pinching you. So if we can get folks to grab a seat. Pearl Chang and Tracy Edwards and Guadalupe and Ruth Silvertobe, Peg Carlson,
Good, how are you?
Jenny. Let me see who else. Sharon, Shannon, Ray, Dr. Blume. Okay, Kayla was a little late. Guadalupe, get over here. Lupe Rodriguez, Lupe. All right. So what we're going to do is, if we could, can we start with, you want to start over here? So Shannon, can we have you all start with some of the critical ideas? And maybe we can grab that handheld. And remember, we're Facebook Live. We went down for a few minutes and people went crazy. So make sure you speak into the mic because people want to hear what you're up to.
Hello, Prochima's mother. My name is Laura Kim. So for our breakout session, my group talked about voter engagement, and we talked about ways to make voting relevant to local high school students. We got a bunch of ideas where we really dove deep. So it was actual issues that came up, like healthcare, bathrooms, homelessness, the housing crisis, climate control, mental health, student debt, and also different ways to make the messaging relevant to youth, as in youth telling youth why they vote. And then we moved on to postcards and messaging, and we got a bunch of really great ones. I wrote them out for you, right? Like vote or blank. Yes, yes. And there were really good ideas about also sending out postcards with a link or a QR code that takes you to a video, which is a new idea. I love it. Thank you so much. We talked about how representation matters, be at the table, not on the menu, and different slogans that have been really popular that we might be able to use as well, like rock the vote, queer the vote, yeah. And then also bringing it back to the individual with I believe in, and instructions on how to get your voice heard, because that piece of information isn't really accessible. Oh, and on that note, we also talked about educating parents who don't know all the different ways you can civically engage and get your voice heard and how to be involved. Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Laura. All right. So over here, we also talked about voter engagement work group and things we could do here. We did talk a lot about the postcards, like keeping in mind the different languages and the different communities. And we thought something to include on the postcards would be photos from our We 2020 events. That would be something great we could get out there, show the community what we're doing, at the same time encouraging them to get out the vote. We also had some ideas for messaging as well, like maybe it's some quotes from celebrities. We want to make this very celebratory, showing people celebrating at the vote center. That's something the league is doing, so we can join them there too. Making sure people know voting is easy and fun. Make sure we're addressing issues that matter to our voters. And our one of the biggest obstacles that we noted here for voters is the number of items that are on the ballot. So how can we address that to our voters and let them know you don't have to vote on every single item. You can just focus on those items that are important to you. So we also did think about, making vote videos that also include that item as well, so we can get more people out there. We another thing we talked about was how we would use our registered voters database and who we would target. We could look at their voting histories and try to target those who don't regularly vote every year, or those who have registered but never voted. And then also look at the age groups and make sure we tailor messages for our postcards when we send those out as well. So those are some great ideas from voter engagement. Thank you everyone for all your great ideas.
To stay on this topic for a minute, because I think if we do both, it might get muddied. But I'm curious, is there anything that stood out for any of you, especially who weren't in the work groups, that you think this sounds great, or here's an idea that you might have? Anybody want to add anything to this?
Cindy, I have another question. There was talk about during the next election and in the booklets that the county sends out of leaving the photos of those running for office, leaving out the photos. Whatever happened to that? There was talk at the state level of leaving off photos. I don't know whatever happened to that idea.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that at all, Norma.
Hello?
Oh.
Well, I'm for the local county voter information guides, we're not allowed to put photos of people for the local ones. I can't speak for the state. I don't produce those. But for the local, we cannot put pictures.
Thank you. Just reminding me.
You're welcome.
So Sharon?
What caught my attention was from Laura. You talked about a cue card or a QR. To me, that is something, you talk about, intergenerational. I have no idea what it is, but I think it's something that really would appeal to the younger. I'm going to learn.
It's fabulous.
And I just really think that targeting the younger folk is great, but don't scaring off the older folk, too, which I think is really important. But that caught my attention. I want a cue card or whatever it is.
We will send you a QR code.
You're going to have your own QR code. just, do you want to do it? Sure.
So basically the QR code, it was an idea that multiple people in the work group talked about and bounced off of, but there was a lot of talk about how the youth loved like videos, it's a little bit more accessible, a little bit more understandable. So recently, instead of like having to retype a link that you might see on the postcard, you can just have a QR code, hold your phone up to it, take a picture, and then it directs you there. So it's more instant, makes it a lot easier. So we were thinking like a slogan and the code. That's all. Yeah. Sorry?
Well, you know what? Just parenthetically, what's kind of cool about it is if we had the QR code up right there, all you'd have to do literally is push the photo up button, and it'll take you right to the website or right to whatever you want to look at. And so I think that is a fabulous idea. I want to reinforce that idea. And then the other thing I wanted to add is that how many of you remember the first time you ever voted? Okay, say, how many of you were nervous the first? Did you vote yet? No. That's so sweet. That's awesome. How many of you were nervous the first time you went to vote? And do you remember what you were nervous about?
Yes.
What were you nervous about, Norma?
I actually was. I wanted to make sure that my vote went to the person I cast my vote for. And it's unbelievable right now we are still having that question and that concern.
Yep, that's a good point. Anybody else remember why you were nervous? Sharon, and then we'll come over to you.
Okay, well, this was the early 60s, and I didn't know what to wear.
What did
I was very excited to vote here, and it was 2016. First time I voted, and I did not know all these steps and everything. Yeah. It was so confusing for me voting here. So I think this is really will be helpful for many people. And I have a South Asian community. So many people really not so educated about how to vote, and only they know the president and then who other representatives are. This will be really helpful. I was very nervous, but I wanted to make sure, just like Norma, that my votes get counted. So that's all.
So the one thing I wanted to suggest is that we do really short videos that we can attach to the QR code. So if you have a question, and so when, for example, Shannon, when you send out the information on the sample ballots, that you could actually put a QR code on there that shows someone within 30 seconds how to vote. And the easier I think we make it, because I remember, so let me just say, I did community organizing for a really long time, and I was in the labor movement for a long time before I ever thought about running for office. And one of the projects I worked on was a foundation funded a nonprofit I was working for to figure out how to encourage moms to vote. In particular, they were so busy, and how did you really get someone? You couldn't, by then the laws didn't allow everybody to vote by mail. You had to have like a disability or something. So anyway, what we did is we did house parties with newly registered voters, and we brought the voting booth in, and we let everybody practice. Our turnout, and it was a small pool of people, but the turnout rate among people who voted was, I think it was 17 points higher than the voter turnout in those communities with this particular subset. And then we did a postcard to remind them, in addition to a call. We sent out, you'll laugh at what we sent out. We sent out, we asked women what was the #1 reason you were voting. Guess what it was? Family. That's exactly right. I want to do something good for my family. So we sent them a little packet of seeds for fall planting and said, plant these just like your votes of planting seeds. We got notes back on them. I mean, so I guess my only point is that I'd like to see what the virtual version of that is, because I think it would be fabulous, to be able to show people, because it is confusing, and the ballot's going to weigh like a pound a ballot, right? It's going to be really long, and that's like doing homework. So okay, any other ideas? I'm gonna, Pratima, and then I'm gonna go out to the. Can you take
Lisa.
the mic out there?
Yes, I'll take the mic. So QR code. I'm going to have Sharon practice now. This is the QR code to register to get on the mailing list for Office of Women's Policy newsletter. Shout out to Julie Ramirez back there. And we're going to practice now while Lisa's going to talk. So where's your phone?
I was just going to point out for people who aren't familiar with QR codes that you have to have the app before you can use a QR code. Is that not true anymore?
No.
Phones?
Phone, just a picture.
Some phones, okay. I was also going to emphasize something that Julie mentioned, which I can't emphasize enough when you talk about why were we nervous maybe the first time we voted. And it's because I think women by nature want to be complete and perfect. Or at least we're taught many times as we're brought up that you need to be complete. And so if you're looking at that large ballot with these questions, ballot issues that maybe you didn't hear about beforehand and you didn't realize, you know, these people are running, that you do start feeling like, oh my gosh, how do I just guess? It's almost like a test and you feel overwhelmed. So the degree that we can really make it easy is key, I think, really key for success.
That's a great point. Any other ideas that people want to add that weren't here? So I want to add two. So one is I want videos that are go to the freezer, get the box. This would be my recommendation. And then the second is, I think one of the things we ought to think about is doing ballot parties. And they're old school. Do you ever remember doing that? Any of you did this? So again, this is, who still does them? You do? So Margaret, explain what it is. You grab that mic.
So we get together with our friends. Everybody brings their ballot, and they bring any information they have about candidates or issues. And then we have a potluck, and we just talk about all the issues, especially like judges. A lot of people don't know, oh my gosh, who do you vote for a certain judge? Yeah, we've been doing it for years.
So I was just the only thing I was going to say about what Margaret just said is that it's very simple. And again, you guys, maybe this is something that we send out to just a really easy, because the way you just described it is so perfect. We bring food together, we have a good debate, and everybody fills out their own ballot, right? So I love that because it creates community around something that should be community, right? Like voting is like so core. Yes, Ruth, and can you grab that mic? Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I have friends that are really, really busy. So what I do is I summarize the propositions just very quickly, what they stand for. Of course, you know, you always have your own views, but I try to make it as neutral as possible. And they really appreciate it. And even my daughter, which, you know, you don't want to tell your daughter what to do, but she says, oh no, Mom, yeah, that's really good. I'm expecting that this year. So I think that's something you can do, because those of us who are really wonky and really love reading through them and summarizing them and figuring them out, especially, yeah, anyway.
That's great. Can you open us So Ray and Protima, can you take the mic over? And then I want to get two more suggestions, and then we'll go to the centennial, and I'll come back to you.
So the first time I voted was Reagan's second term. And I was actually working the election, so I had to do it beforehand. And I was nervous that it was going to actually get counted. But what I wanted to suggest is, as a parent, we have to hear our children. Many times the folks, when I'm working at the election polls, the ones that are rushed are the ones that are rushing home to get their kids from school, and they're trying to vote. But if you get the children involved, for instance, say the county board members were to put it out to the schools in their own board districts that they wanted to paint one of the walls and let the kids vote on the color. You get the kids to vote on something at school, and they go home and remind their parents because they're talking about what they've done, and it gives a footing for them to vote in the future. We did it with the schools, the animal they were going to choose to represent the school at Russo McEntee. So, thank you.
Thank you. That's a great idea. Tracy.
Thank you. I'm going to repeat some of the ideas, but hopefully mash them up in a slightly different way. And I was boring the group over in the far corner with the same thought. I think the greatest barrier for people to participate isn't when they say I don't have the time, it's really I don't have the knowledge. I am overwhelmed. People have already acknowledged this. I am overwhelmed by the quantity of things I have to decide, and while I can probably figure out senator and president, I'm then lost. When you get down to water district, you know, forget it. When you're at, you know, the 20th proposition on the ballot, you know, you're toast. And so one of the wonderful things about the VCA is everybody's going to get a ballot. And the statistics are so profoundly higher They're substantially higher when you vote at home because you get to do exactly what people are suggesting. You can get together with others and talk about it and try to understand it in a relaxed, thoughtful, and Googleized manner because you can start to look things up. And now I'm going to do a blatant commercial. League of Women Voters, the best thing they do is Voters Edge. VotersEdge.org, completely nonpartisan, goes through all the candidates, money in the politics, in all the elections and all the ballot measures with an very even-handed pro and con on every measure. And it's going to those kinds of sites that I think will make us a far more informed electorate and a much higher turnout. And it makes it less painful and more relaxed and non-threatening.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Beth.
This is a variation on what Ray was talking about, generational, spending time with your children. In 2015, going into 2016 election of Trump, I was interviewing some kids who were from the Vietnamese community who could vote for the first time. And they were explaining to me that they wanted to have a situation with their parents because they said, my parents came here from Vietnam. They were so busy getting up and running and getting jobs and so forth that they didn't get involved politically. They're registered Republican, however. We're Democrats now. We want to vote Democratic, but we want to be able to, I want to be able to influence my mother a little bit more or my father because they never were involved in politics. So, I mean, there's a flip side to that too, depending on the community or situation you're in.
So thank you, Beth. One other recommendation I wanted to make is that I think the idea of helping kids understand how to vote is pretty critical. And I know that when Brennan was little, the I voted sticker would end up on any number of things, right? Because he would want the sticker. But I'm wondering if we want to think about I helped vote, or my mom voted, or my dad voted, if we want to think about a variation on the I voted sticker. People love that sticker. Like, I have some people who will never ever vote by mail because they want that sticker. They want to wear it that day. They want to wear it that day. I mean, like, I know you send them out now, right?
No, we have stopped that before, but guess who's bringing him back for March of 2020?
So my only recommendation is let's think about a family sticker or I voted for the first time sticker, something that's a little take on that, because I think people will love that stuff.
And social media badges too.
Yeah, the social media badges. That's a really good point.
How about I helped others vote?
Yeah, and I helped someone else vote. I think that's great. Mine was, I couldn't get my wording, but I was like, I helped to vote. Because that's how my son would have said it when he was little, right? Actually, just a funny story. When Brennan was really little, he knocked over a voting booth, like a little. So then we stopped taking him with us when he was little. But okay, good. Anything else on this? I think these are great ideas. We're going to want to send out. Oh, go ahead,
Kristen.
So what we're going to do, just while she's getting ready, we're going to send these out to everybody. So if you have another thought about it, like pitch it back to us.
We're talking
community colleges too.
We're talking a lot about educating children about voting and engaging parents. If we do that at the same time, like have a class for kids at the same time, there's a class or like a ballot party for the mothers, I would be much more likely to engage with that kind of activity.
Yeah, that's right. That's a really good point. Make our celebrations intergenerational. That's a really great idea. One other thing I just remembered is when we go to the high schools again, the biggest feedback I got from the high school students was food. They wanted better snacks. No, seriously, I got my head handed to me. We did a one-day voter reg. We just did a trial project with the registrar last year, and this young person walked up to me and said, "Are you sending John?" I said, "Yes. Thank you for letting me sign up to vote, but what would have been helpful is better food and signs up a couple days in advance so I know exactly what ID I need to bring." I don't know what we asked them for, but they wanted their student ID. I don't know what that was. And then they wanted better music, and they wanted to know in advance so they could plan with their friends to come. So anyway, so we got to keep doing that. But food seemed to be the theme. All right, so now we're going to party, to celebration, to Protima. Let's give this group a round of applause. This was a great set of ideas. All right, Protima.
So one of the biggest themes throughout the conversation was how do we balance the fact that our kickoff was on a weekday during a time when most people work. So we want to make sure, the idea began with some sort of a press conference about launching the centennial, and then it became a very successful event. But something on the 26th of August 2020 is what the Centennial Commemoration Group wants, but something that will be inclusive for people who work and who have caregiving responsibilities, as well as something that doesn't cost an arm and a leg. Some of the ideas were, what about a series of events in different geographical locations? And then somebody referenced what Morgan Hill was doing. It's a 7-series event which happens around August 26th. Also, there were ideas about the passport. Do we want to find a way to curate what's happening throughout the county related to the 19th Amendment centennial, or do we want to go out and get information and put it in one place? It can be either or, but there was also an idea about making sure that we create something that has a legacy value. So in 2021 or 2022, somebody should be able to look up these events and know this is how people are celebrating or commemorating. There was an idea about a film festival. I believe the Women's Club has a Luna Fest. So pitching, as it is, the Luna Fest is women themed, so pitching to the folks to have a 19th Amendment themed Luna Fest in 2020. There is something called the Poppy Jasper Film Festival as well that everyone was talking about, trying to get that film festival also focus on the 19th Amendment. Something about the August 26th day, the day off, going back to what we just closed with on the voter engagement. How do we get our children to understand that this is a very important day? Perhaps starting a campaign right now to get children going to school that day to wear white throughout the county. If we can do that, that on the 26th of August 2020, I have goosebumps as I say that. It's because I have back to school night that started at 6 o'clock. It's already 6:15. But it was an idea so that we can actually be intergenerational in the way we engage on that particular day. In the perfect world, we could also work towards getting some sort of a federal holiday, but we know that in this county, we can make a lot of things happen, so let's think about what is locally possible. Also, there was an idea about trying to find in your family members, among your family members, the first women in your family who were able to vote, to get that, to get a curated picture museum on WE 2020 that actually has a legacy and a history that we built. So go back into your families, find out who was the woman in your family who voted for the first time, when did they vote, if you can get a picture, that would be a great idea. Also, of course, the idea about having some sort of a gala and or a banquet and or a fundraiser on the 26th of August so that we can actually have a big moment to celebrate, maybe invite speakers. The Centennial Work Group is collecting names of speakers, but we also don't want to just have a speaker. So we have to think about how, as Nicole was saying, an intersectional a representation of different themes. There was also a talk about making sure that whatever we do engages folks in each of the districts. So all the 5 supervisory districts should be represented. And so especially if we're thinking about multiple events, we have to focus on that. There was a big stress on a parade. I think that the walk/parade/march on 26th of August was a big hit, and so folks want a parade. And apparently there's somebody in the Centennial Celebration Group who's been talking about this since it formed, to have a parade where people sit on horses, and I am just reporting. Also making sure that the Commission on the Status of Women, they actually Jennifer is here from the commission. She's the commission appointee. She said that the commission has established what's called an ad hoc for Women's Equality 2020, and for us to work with the commission to do something together, because this is an important day to show highlight local organizations that have done work with the Commission on the Status of Women for Women's Equality Day. Finally, there was some talk about a conference-style event maybe on the 26th, but we were discussing constantly not to have something that makes people have to choose between working and coming to an event, and so that was the discussion. But if we want a conference-style event, then that could be on a weekend, so the prior weekend, August 15th or something. There was a specific mention about intersectionality, and so the example that was given was the South Asian communities have a lot of events that target just the community members, and we could probably table or have a booth at these events to talk about the 19th Amendment. And that, I think... Oh, and make sure that the event, whatever we have, is inclusive and doesn't cost an arm and a leg, preferably free, much like what we had on August 26th, 2019. So that was a big piece. Yeah.
Great. All right. Give them a round of applause. Those were some great ideas. Other thoughts or feedback ideas that people want to give? Anybody have something they're just like, what? We should do this. You like all of it? Is there anything that, well, let me just make a couple of observations or requests. One is that I think that this year is the year of Let 1,000 Flowers Bloom. And I say that because when we did our event on August 26th, as soon as that event became public, we got a lot of feedback from people saying, I'm going to do something, or I want to do something, or I want to do something with you, but not on a different day. And so what I would just say is I think it would be really great for us to figure out a way to if events meet certain criteria, like they're low cost or free, they're focused on this year, that we just sanction them and we put them on a calendar on the website so everybody can see what's happening that week. So if you want to see a film, you want to go to a play, that everybody can just put it up on that. So we're letting everybody do what they want without impeding them. Are you okay with that? Because that's really the way to be inclusive, is let people do their party how they want to party, right? The second thing I want to recommend is that we have an online toolkit for people who want to do their own thing with their friends. So for example, books that you want to do a book club, cocktail party, well, I don't know if we can advertise cocktail parties, but like just what kind of like, what are pictures that people can draw down for their invitations, and just really like what they can do with their own gals and guys. And what's that? Yeah, just to let people go have fun, but also to give them, because I'll tell you, we all did so much research for these events that we actually have a lot of research, like where do you get sashes, and why do they stand on soapboxes? I mean, there's like a lot of fun stuff that we could do just on the website that lets 1,000 Flowers Bloom. My only request would be, I'd say to them, here are our best ideas, give us your best ideas, and then send us pictures. Because wouldn't it be fun to see how just people celebrated? Yeah, we could do that? So those are, now let me just talk about kind of the event, and I really, really want your opinion about this. So the reason we did the event early in the day on August 26th was really two reasons. One was that I didn't think about doing it at night. Selfishly, I wasn't going to be here, but that's not the only reason. I really wanted to shut down a street in the workday. And so I realized that left some people out, but when I think about what women did to get the right to vote, and some men, we had women who were assaulted, jailed, probably killed that we don't know about, harmed, fired from their jobs, kicked off the universities that they were working at, not losing grants for science. I mean, a lot of bad things happened to women who stuck up for other people, and so I wanted to do something that was much more like, I don't know, it was a soft way of doing it. I didn't even want to tell the cops at first, but then I realized, I thought that, because it felt less defiant. somehow. I say that because I think that it makes a lot of sense to do something like we did in a more parade format where way more people can participate. It definitely should be a weekend. But we're going to need to do something on the day of the 26th. And it doesn't have to be one event. It could be multiple events. And here was the other thing that you'll learn if you spend time with Beth, is that it was also an opportunity for us to talk to the public about the kickoff, because by doing it in the morning, it allowed us to get a lot of your voices, your social media, getting on TV, and really making the day about women. So I want to just say, I still think we might need to do something during the day, even if we do something on the evening of that actual date. So, and not to leave people out, but more because it should be wild and all day long. Any concerns about that? That's okay if we do more than one thing? Yeah.
We even start with something early for people who might want to go. Maybe we could even start the day really early for any early birds. I'm not one of those, but I mean, I could imagine someone saying, let's get together at 7 a.m. or 6:45 before you go to work and have coffee and make a toast to the day and the celebration or something.
Yeah, I like the way you think. Start toasting.
Yeah, start posting early.
Yeah.
She said boasting, you said
I thought
toasting.
It's like, I love that woman. Yeah.
I think that it's very inclusive to have different times during the day. Yeah. And I think that we could divide and conquer and have something in the morning, during the day, lunchtime, later on, and then a celebration. So I think that if we could do that, it's more inclusive, and people that are available to attend in the morning, it's better for them, or other options.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, that approach will also, I think this is live, that approach also plays to free up to costly, right? You can have a whole range of sort of sophistication of events.
And other thoughts? Because I have just two more that I've been thinking about this part of the meeting all day. So two more thoughts. One is that I do really want to acknowledge that every woman got the right to vote at a different point in history, and including depending on the state she lived in. So I also would like very much, and I really want to get your feedback on this, but I would like to do a couple of events, evening events, low cost or free, in fact probably free, in partnership with 100 Black Women, NAACP, the Vietnamese Business Association, so that we can actually have a conversation about the history of what happened and why. So it helps us think a lot about the future. And it's not, and I don't mean it to like beat up on anybody. I just think that there's so much to learn from the past. And I think especially at this time in history, like this, that having those deep discussions, and not everybody's going to be down for that, but actually Protima gave me a book that just has really got me excited about the idea of bringing out a couple of authors who've written about these times and having a discussion with them, because it's, I think it's okay, and I think it's important for us to have a conversation about why what happened, and how as we move forward as women, we don't do that again, because I think otherwise we will. Right?
Marjorie, would you take that mic, please?
So, thoughts?
So, I really like that idea. What do you think about connecting the dots with the past and the present, and looking at the issues that are facing women today that we're really struggling with? So, I think the message is we need to celebrate what happened, but also let's not forget that the fight is not over, and that we need to, galvanize and mobilize around these issues and present what those issues are, because I work with a lot of young people, and they think that the struggle is over, that's something that happened to their mothers and their grandmothers.
Yeah.
So looking at the key issues that are facing women today and addressing those and connecting that with the past, what the struggles was, and how the fight still continues. That would be my recommendation.
I think that's a great idea. I would think a couple things. One is, I think this is where we partner with our community colleges and go right on campus and have these discussions. discussions and have it sponsored by organizations and not be afraid of that. Some of that we may want to partner. That it may be a little more political, and I want to think a little bit about that because it may be something that I sponsor with you, or we get a bunch of women to sponsor with Planned Parenthood or with other organizations. But I think that's a great idea. Well, yeah, and here's what I would say. What she was just asking is, could we go to other universities? And here's what I would suggest. Whoever you most want to hear, whatever structure you think is most interesting, I'm going to just ask you to send it to the Office of Women's Policy. If we between the two of us, we can figure out a way to do it, we'll do it. If we can't, we'll be real honest with you and say, here's what's hard about that. But help us think about it. I think this is an opportunity for us to really, like what the Women's March did was get people out of their living rooms, right? And onto the streets. Our job is to get them doing something in addition to that, right? I feel like this year, this is our opportunity to do that. Yes, Tracy?
So in the run-up to the 100th anniversary, I've done a lot of reading and a lot of thinking about the politics from the 1840s to date. And I think whatever is done in terms of introspection and understanding has to be quite complete, the good and the bad. Because as you read about it, you understand how much sort of political pragmatism went into each of these what appear to be veers, or expediency may be the more slightly negative way of characterizing it. But I think it's important to set the cultural tone at the time, why it happened, 15th Amendment, why women weren't there, what happened with the 19th Amendment, why didn't Jim Crow laws change sooner, Asian women, et cetera, et cetera. I think it has to be the whole political spectrum of what happened and how it evolved, because that's how you understand how to avoid it.
I agree.
It's with that context.
Right. But let me push back a little bit. I think you're right, Tracy, but I'm going to say something else that I've been thinking a lot about. I also think it is an opportunity to demonstrate how to have meaningful conversations without tearing people apart. And I think what that means is that I think it's okay to have a discussion that's less sanitized in terms of, because depending on what history book you're reading and depending on who authored it, you get a very different sense of the beginning of our country, where we are now. And so for me, in addition to your point about being thoughtful and digging deep and really understanding context, I also think requires us to create an environment where we can have very important discussions in a very respectful way. And I think the reason that's so important is when you look at what's happening at a national level, and I'll just tell you, I actually did something, anyway, I didn't want to digress there. But my point only is this, that I think our ability to have these conversations is going to create a much stronger movement for women in this county. And I want to be able to do that. And I think we have to be thoughtful, and I think we have to be careful, but I don't want us to be fearful of diving in. And frankly, not everybody understands our history very well either.
Cindy, if I could just quick
go
response,
ahead.
I'm so sorry. I'm not so concerned about careful, because you can't walk on eggshells. I am concerned about thoughtful, and I am concerned, I think we are in alignment, frankly, because I think it's about, sorry, is this better? I think it's really it's important to understand all those twists and turns in order to avoid having to take so many zigs and zags to go forward. And by doing it, I think thoughtfully, it avoids pointing fingers. It says, this is where it was, and this is what happened, and this is how you move forward, and this is what we could do differently now.
Well, and I think what's particularly important about that is none of us were there. So there's a lot of other people we can blame. I'm just kidding. But yeah, I totally hear what you're saying, Tracy. I think you're right. We are in agreement.
I would like to just get us back, though, to from my perspective as a mother and a grandma, that the young kids in my family kind of roll their eyes if I start talking about too much history. They seem to want it when they want it, but not me giving the lecture. So I would like to make sure that we're talking about, here's how you do it, here's what the issues are today, and Because let's face it, when I write everything down, I tell them this is what the League of Women Voters is saying. This is what, and I present all the issues, and obviously I have a point of view too. And my kids want that, but they don't want me to be lecturing about it. And then suddenly they'll ask me about it. So I'm just worried. Let's write it all down, the twists and turns. But I don't want us to be lecturing so much as being real practical.
Well, and Anne, let me just say, I think what we're talking about is there are so many days in the year, and not everybody's going to go to everything.
Oh, right.
I think this is a very specific opportunity, and I will say too, I don't know if you attended the event and I apologize because there were a lot of people there. We did a leadership event on August 17th, and at that event, it was focused on women. And at that event, one of the things that I was really struck by was we had a bunch of different workshops. People went to the thing that they wanted, and that's really what we're trying to do, but over the course of a year.
Right. That's what are people interested in? Let's provide it for them.
Well, and I think for the thing we're kind of talking about, frankly, ties into some of the feedback we got from the leadership program that we did, where we had young women who wanted more exposure, and then we had women who were more, like I would say, in their mid-career, who really wanted even something more, more deep. Like they wanted to go deeper, and so this is really what we're looking at. And I will say for young people, and I'm just going to say it out loud, the other thing I think we ought to think about is fun events like comedy shows, and but again, I think if we give a toolkit, people can do whatever they like, and then they tell us about it, and then we can go. So I see we're past time. I didn't mean to do that. Is there anything else do people feel good about the direction? Is there anybody who has a concern about it? I only want to hear concerns right now. All right, Norma, you get to.
And that is that we went around the room when we were in Palo Alto, and we came back with some long sheets with some wonderful troubleshooting. And I cannot wait until those sheets are combined with the ideas we came up with today.
Yeah, good memory. Hey, before everybody goes, and I know we didn't do our debrief of the 26th, but I think you got to do a little bit of it as part of the ideas here. I wanted to make a couple of announcements. This is Audrey's last meeting. I know, right? Audrey is going to Washington State, University of Washington, Huskies, right? And she was chosen for a very elite program on leadership that she will be studying there. So give her a round of applause. Julie, I don't know if Julie's still here, but Julie from our Office of Women's Policy, Ramirez, got an award this weekend from the Latina Coalition for Outstanding Leadership. Give her a round of applause. Victor, I don't know where Victor is still, but Victor on my team is going to be studying for the LSAT. So he's going to get 6 weeks of us not stalking, bothering him, or sending him Oreo cookies. In the meantime, if you need anything from our office, you can reach out to Beth, and we'll make sure we stay included in that. But I just want you to know that one of the first things Victor came to me and said is, I've got to study for the LSAT, but I promise not to miss a meeting. So I know, give him a round of applause. We're so excited for him. And then I think we'll just go ahead and wrap up. And then if people want to give us more feedback on the 26th, we're excited to hear about it. And good meeting. And Protima wants to say one more thing.
I just want to share that we had 340 people.
Say it.
340 on August 26th. That was going to be the only thing I would say.
And you know what? Can I say why that's so great? I was reading one of the newspaper articles that said we almost had 100. I'm like, that's not 100. Learn how to count. But anyway, good job. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
It was because she was, yeah.